Hello crafty friends and welcome back. Today I'm going to be DIY trying my first ever sewing project. I'm going to be making this advent calendar. You can see here that it starts life as a pre-printed panel. I am told that this is one of the easiest projects, so let's get started. It comes printed like this and it has these fold lines along the side, and it also has the instructions printed at the top. The instructions ask you to cut everything out and then fold it, which didn't make sense to me because those fold indicator lines would be cut off. So I decided to go rogue right on step one and go ahead and fold everything in place, and then just grab some pins and carefully pin along the sides to hold it in place. So you can see that those folds are going to create our little advent calendar spaces. And yes, I know this video is a little bit late going up. Please forgive me, we are already past the 1st of December 2019. If you're watching this in the future, then maybe you have time to make one of these for your advent calendar for next year. So I'm just going to carry on working my way down, creating these little pockets for my sweets and treats to go into. Because of how this is all printed, it means that the pockets are kind of fully lined. They have that pattern continuously all along the inside, which I think is really nice. I think these would actually make really great gifts. And I've always wanted a reusable advent calendar, so I think this is kind of fun. So I really took my time with this, making sure that I got everything perfectly lined up. This was one of the things that, I'm new to sewing. I've done some very basic sewing when I was a kid, really, and this is the first kind of project that I've sewn on my own start to finish. So I was really taking my time with it, making sure I got everything pinned exactly as I wanted it, and kind of checking and rechecking and adjusting. And I also found that a lot of sewing is actually just ironing. You really should iron everything before you start so it's really nice and smooth. Then you'll probably want to iron in those folds, and I don't really like ironing, but I let that pass for this. Anyway, so I'm going along and pinning those pieces in place, and then when I got to the bottom, I started to trim everything out, just as you can see here. So once I'd gone ahead and cut everything out, I grabbed this black fabric that I picked up at Hobbycraft to be the lining, and I cut it to be slightly larger than the panel. I actually cut it significantly larger. I don't think that was necessary. And then to give this a little cushion to make it really kind of plush and durable, I added in this batting, which I've used in one of my previous videos when I tried bookbinding. So I had this on hand already, and it's kind of like, how am I going to describe this? It's kind of like a cotton wool fabric. That's probably a terrible description, but that's what it seems like to me. So I'm going to go ahead and pin that in place. So I have my printed advent calendar, then I have the batting, and then I have the backing fabric, which I just chose to use black because there's quite a lot of black in this design. You could definitely use a nice Christmassy red as well. I think that would look really nice. So I went ahead and pinned all around the outside, and then I moved to my sewing machine. So I've switched the angle so you can see what I'm doing here. And I'm just stitching along one of those sides, remembering to remove the pins as I go, just to make sure I don't break the needle in my little Hobbycraft MIDI sewing machine. So I'm just feeding everything through, kind of working slowly, trying to get as straight a line as possible. And this is going to seal up the sides and also make sure that all those layers of fabric are kind of trapped together with that stitching. So I kept going until I got to the end, and then I just sewed backwards a little bit. So there's a little lever on the sewing machine to do a back stitch, just to kind of lock everything in place. Your sewing machine might have a locking stitch option. I know that that's true of my Nan's sewing machine, which is the one that I've used previous to this. And I'll be honest, my little setup here with the camera wasn't ideal for sewing. I definitely think I could have got slightly better results had I have used a larger desk away from my camera, but I kind of had to navigate the camera as I was doing this, but I got pretty straight lines. I'm fairly happy. So you can see here I got to the end, and then I hold down that foot that will reverse the stitching, and then I'll go ahead and trim the threads. So here we have it with that stitching all along that one side. And you can see everything's held together nicely and it's sealed up the side of those pockets. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch all of these sections that I'm indicating here with my finger, and that's going to create the dividers between each of those pockets, and then I'll go right the way around the outside edges just to attach everything together. Okay, so I cut that out so you're not looking at it for too long. I think there's not too much to see with me sewing straight lines, but you can see now we've got these cute little pockets, and I'm going to start working on the hanging element. I grabbed some wooden dowels and wrapped them with a thin red ribbon. There wasn't really any instructions on how to create the hanging element, so I just made it up. I'm going to trim off the excess of the batting and the black fabric at the back. And then I'm just going to fold over the material. So I've got a little section that is wide enough for me to be able to insert that wooden dowel. And then I will fold that over, stitch a line in place, and just thread that wooden dowel through. We also need to finish off each of those edges. So I grabbed this stuff, which I am assured is called bias binding, and it is a fabric that it kind of has a fold in the middle, and you can open it out, stitch it in place, and then wrap it over your edge, and then sew along it again, and it just creates a nice finished edge. I probably should have got one a little bit wider. This was a little narrow and kind of fiddly to work with. I also think I was supposed to sew it on the back first and then fold it over to the front and sew again, but you'll live and learn. I was definitely in a DIY try territory here, which is where I try out a DIY I haven't done before and we share the results, good or bad. So I've gone ahead and pinned this all along the bottom edge, and then I'll just run that through my sewing machine again, just stitching that in place, making sure that I'm only sewing that one side that I've pinned onto the front of this panel. So once I have finished with this, I'll show you a close-up so you can see what it looks like. We've now got this black material that I can just pull over, fold towards the back and pin in place, and then stitch along that edge, and it just creates this really nice finished edge. So I went ahead and did that for the bottom edge and also two of the sides just to finish everything in place, so I had that nice black border. So once that was all finished, it was time to go ahead and thread through the bamboo skewer that I created using that red ribbon. You can't see most of it, so you definitely could have just wrapped the ends, but because I'd used a couple different pieces to get the skewer long enough, I felt like the ribbon added a little stability. So again, to create that, I just folded over the top of the fabric, stitched along the back so I had this little open tube that I could just go ahead and thread that through. And now I'm using some more of that same red ribbon just to tie a knot at each end and create a hanging loop. And then that will be this DIY advent calendar completely finished. I was so excited to share this with people and to show them that I made it. As I said earlier, I think it would make an incredible gift. Definitely a bit of a labor of love. I'm sure if you're more experienced with sewing, you would be much quicker at making it than I am, and I certainly learned a lot along the way. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, let me know in the comments. If you're DIYing any of your gifts, I would love to hear about it. And I hope to see you back here again soon for the next video. That is all from me. I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.